Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Garrett Horner. Today's edition, I want to continue my talks about Egan Bernal, the Colombian Tour de France champion from 2019 and Giro d'Italia champion. Now, I told you guys in one edition back on Beyond the Coverage that I thought when you start looking at Egan Bernal's beginning of the season here that it looks really good. He went solid, top fives in national championships. He's coming in the Tour of Colombia. He was riding up there in the front, and I said, hey, stage 5 was going to be a big marker on whether or not if Egan Bernal's form has really returned to what we had saw when he won the Tour de France in 2019 and the Giro d'Italia. Now, when we finish stage 5, no one could possibly tell you whether or not if his form has really returned, unless, of course, he just blitzed the field, soloed up the climb, and won the overall classification. You can start saying that, wow, he's definitely there and he's got exceptional form. But keep in mind, when we start looking at stage 5, it's only a 108-kilometer stage. They're dropping down a big descent, small valley, and then they're going up what's effectively 30 kilometers full gas of a climb, but probably more longer than 40K, I would say, when you're really looking at it proper. But the difficult thing when you're looking at this stage 5 climb is that it's 6 and 7%. And more like 6% for the whole length of that 30 kilometers. Now, when you start getting on a 6% climb, you're going to drop all the non-climbers for short, but you're going to add guys in there that aren't pure climbers like Egan Bernal really is. Egan Bernal is a rider that would like 10%. He's a rider that would like Langaroo. Now, I've done the Tour of Colombia, and I did it back in 2018 with Luminate. That was a team that was kind of part of the Airgas team here, but it was a couple years later. They didn't have enough guys for their team, so the manager of the team, Chris Johnson, called me up a few months before it, and he said, hey, Chris, we want you to do the Tour of Colombia. I didn't even have a racing license. I was basically done. And he called me up, he said, hey, come do the Tour of Colombia with our team. And I said, Chris, there's no reason for me to go to Tour of Colombia. Get some young kid. And he said, I don't have anyone that can get or anyone that can finish the race. And if we don't have enough guys to start the race, none of my team could start at all. So if you don't come, we can't start. I said, okay, I've been training. I'll go ahead and start it. So I can tell you, when we did the climb that was 50K long in that Tour of Colombia, it was much like the one that they did a couple days back here, where Egan Bernal had to really suffer a lot to go up this climb. And all the riders do, because at 6% and at a climb of over 30 kilometers long, you have to remember to eat a lot. There's a little bit of wind drag because of the speeds at 6%. These guys are doing 15, 20 miles an hour going up this climb most of the time, and then the attacks are coming in at 25 and 30 miles an hour. So they're going over 50K an hour when they're putting in these big attacks. You can look at their chain rings, and they're riding either 39, 15, 16, 17 occasionally, or they're riding the big chain ring. And they got it crossed up back there, so you know the speeds are big. Now, when we get into the race, well, they see there's 7 guys going up the road, no big deal, right? We see New Colombia back there is riding because they have the race leader's jersey. And, of course, that's Rodrigo, and he's race leader, but only with a few seconds. He's got 4 seconds on Tejada. That's sitting from Astana. And then, of course, you go back to about 30 seconds, and you have the EF Education riders, Rigoberto Urán, and 3 other riders from EF Education sitting at 40 seconds. Esteban Chavez is one of those riders. Quality rider, there's no doubt about it. Carapaz, he is a Giro d'Italia champion, and he's gone podium at other Grand Tours. This is a quality field here, guys, when you're watching this Stage 5 at Tour of Colombia in 2024 to try to figure out what kind of form Egan Bernal has. Now remember, Egan Bernal's won 2 Grand Tours. Giro, like I said, in Tour de France in 2019. But of course, Nairo Quintana's there. He's won 2 Grand Tours. He's won the Giro d'Italia, and he's won the Tour of Spain. So quality field, and Rigoberto Urán, who's gone in the podium and second at the Tour de France, is quality. When we look at Carapaz from EF Education, he is the gold medal from the Olympics in the road race. This is a quality field, make no doubt about it. The Colombians can ride fast when we're talking about going uphill. And when you start looking at the race leader, Rodrigo Contreras, this rider, he spent a few years with Astana back in 2019 and 2020. So all these riders up here are top quality. I want you to understand that. But first, I really want you to understand that it's one climb, short stage, and a very, very fast climb. So the speeds at 15 and 20 miles an hour means there's a massive draft. Now, when the climb starts proper and we start getting into about 25 kilometers to go, this is where the Colombian national team with Egan Bernal leading it makes a mistake. They get on the front and start riding hard. I don't believe this is really necessary. When you start looking at EF Education with the quality of riders they have, I don't think it's necessary for the Colombian national team to get on the front for Egan Bernal unless he was feeling absolutely spectacular, but they get on the front. Now, we know right away after they've been on the front just a short time that it was a bad decision because, of course, we see Astana get on the front with Alexei Lusenko. When Alexei Lusenko's on the front, he's riding hard because 4 seconds down on the general classification is his teammate Harold Tejada. Now, with that 4-second gap, that's why Alexei Lusenko's on the front. Not the wisest of decision, but you're 4 seconds back. You're hoping Rodrigo there from New Colombia, wearing the race leader's yellow jersey, isn't on good form. Maybe Tejada could do something special. Later, we'll find out that was a big-time mistake too. And again, when you're looking at Astana on the front and you're seeing 4 EF Education riders there, it's not a good decision when all 4 of those EF Education riders are high on general classification. You know they want to win the general classification here or they want to win the stage. Either way, Astana's on the front. We see, of course, the Colombian national team all drop except for Brandon Rivera, who's the teammate of Egan Bernal when we're talking about his Ineos teammates. Now, right now, at the moment, though, they're riding for the Colombian national team, and there's only 2 left. So it wasn't a good decision to put your whole team on the front if none of them can climb well. Either way, they're blown. We see Egan Bernal back there, about 15th spot back there, holding on. 20 kilometers to go, Nairo Quintana gets popped from Movistar. He comes off the back, so we know the 2-time Grand Tour champ doesn't quite have his form. I read some articles afterwards about Nairo Quintana, and they said, he just doesn't have it. It might take him a year to get used to it. Guys, it's the first race. It's February. It's no big deal if Nairo Quintana is good at Tour of Colombia or not, and it's really no good whether if you win or not won't tell you a whole lot. But you want to be in the picture and in the mix. And like I said before, I thought Egan Bernal is going to be good this year because I look at him, he's in the picture, he's in the mix. Doesn't need to win for me up here on Beyond the Coverage for me to think that Egan Bernal is going to be good this season. Would help if he does, but doesn't need to do it. What I need to see is when the attacks start with about 15 kilometers to go, as the last of the breakaway group's getting caught, just as that's happening, we're seeing Esteban Chavez from EF Education, who sat beautifully the whole time up this climb for what's effectively about 25 kilometers so far. Now it's 15K to go. Esteban Chavez is throwing in a big dig. Now, New Colombia has to come to the front because they have the race leader, like I've told you already. So it's Mendez on the front, there for Rodrigo sitting second wheel. Now, they'll bring back, of course, right away, Esteban Chavez. Then we're going to see an attack that's coming up next. And this attack's going to be a big one. And it's going to put the hurt into the riders. And what's happening right here is Richard Carapaz is going up the road. Once he goes, we see Rodrigo. He's going to try to close it. And it's going to take him just a few hundred meters before he closes to the back wheel of Chavez. Now, this is where you want to start seeing how riders formed is really at. Nairo Quintana, we know he's still got a ways to make because he dropped off 5K earlier, if not 6. Now we look up here at Egan Bernal, though, and we see he's still in this front group. Shortly after the attack there of the 2 riders going up the road, Egan Bernal's getting on the front. Tejada's going to ride with him, and Ivan Sosa from Movistar's right. Those 3 riders are riding on the front, and I guarantee you they're doing at least 15 miles an hour. Sorry, they're doing a solid 25 to 30 kilometers an hour right up here. So 15 to 20 miles an hour, these 3 are going to be pulling. They're going to go fast on a 6% climb, which means all the EF Education riders behind Egan Bernal, Tejada, and of course Ivan Sosa are getting a nice bit of draft there and able to recover a little bit as Richard Carapaz, their team race leader here on this stage 5, is going up the road with Rodrigo. Now those 2 riders up the road start working well together and smooth. They'll work well together for quite a while until Esteban Chavez really throws in attack. This allows Carapaz up front to start sitting on the race leader's yellow jersey there of Rodrigo. Why can he sit? He's waiting for his teammate to come across, Esteban Chavez. Now, again, this is where you start seeing a lot of who has good form right now in February in the year 2024 because Egan Bernal is having to cover moves and ride the front in the wind and cover those riders like Esteban Chavez that have been relaxed and sitting on the wheel. And of course, when we see Jefferson Cepeda back there, he's getting a free ride. Rigoberto Urán was sitting on. Esteban Chavez, like I said, he'd done the first attack, but now he's had time to recover. So you know with Egan Bernal, he's put under the knife. He's used up all his teammates, and Brandon Riviera dropped off earlier before the big attack started, so he's solo. When you start seeing a rider on a 6 to 7% climb of this length, and he has to ride the front and then cover multiple attacks, like we see with Egan Bernal, you know he's on solid form. Now we start getting up to under 9, into like 6, 7, and 8 kilometers to go. Everything's going to come back together up front with Egan Bernal's effort back there pulling things back together. So it expands. There's attacks all the way from 15 to under 10 kilometers to go. And Egan Bernal's going to fight to bring everything back together, and he gets it back together just as they're going over a nice little bump with a descent. So of course we see EF Education go on the attack again. And when you're coming up over the climb pulling hard and there's a little bit of a descent, that's a perfect moment to attack, because of course everybody's tired that's been pulling on the front, especially race leader Rodrigo up there, who's done a spectacular stage 5 here at the Tour of Colombia to protect his race leader's jersey. But when we start seeing EF riders attacking again, and then it all comes back together, we see Richard Carapaz with just under 5 kilometers to go. He throws in a massive attack. Then, of course, we see Jonathan Caicedo there riding for one of the Colombian teams that used to be EF Education rider. He's going full gas trying to close the gap, closes up to Richard Carapaz, and then Carapaz throws in another big acceleration. That'll put him solo all the way to the finish of today's Stage 5, where he'll win the stage. But behind, what's happening with Egan Bernal? Well, Jefferson Cepeda was going second. Then third, we'll see the race leader's yellow jersey there, Rodrigo. Like I said, did a fantastic job. Fourth place is Egan Bernal. We see Egan Bernal's pulling hard. He's getting a little bit of help there, of course, from EF Education, Rigoberto Urán. He's pulling just a little bit because he's 10 seconds higher than Egan Bernal in the general classification. So he's helping Egan a little bit. But as all 4 of these groups, first group there, of course, with Carapaz, second with Jonathan Caicedo, and then third with the race leader, Rodrigo Contreras, we see them pulling hard, and Egan Bernal's holding all of those guys solid all the way to the finish with one big acceleration where he'll get a little gap, of course, on Rigoberto Urán, but Rigoberto Urán had a little bit of play on the general classification, so there's no reason to kill the licks. But with that 5th spot on the general classification, when everything's all said and done here at Tour of Colombia, with the quality of field that you are looking at here at the 2024 race, you know Egan Bernal is there with form that he can make better and better once we get into the European peloton here, when we start talking Paris-Nice and Tirreno-Adriatico after the first week of March. That's when it really matters. But here in February, if you see a rider that's going up in these 40-kilometer long climbs here at Tour of Colombia in the front group, with Grand Tour winners left and right, with week-long stage race winners left and right, and with a field of quality climbers like you have, you know Egan Bernal's form's good. All he has to do is stay healthy. When I look at his schedule coming up, of course he has Strada Bianchi on his schedule. I wouldn't put that on there if I was Team Ineos and I had Egan Bernal. I would want to keep him in the safest races possible. Get him through the early parts of these season races safe, no crashes, no injuries. Don't bump the knee ever again like has happened in years past after he starts finding some form. Last season, he'd crashed a lot. I want to keep the Colombian rider safe and healthy for as long as possible, and I want to see him shine and get big-time results, especially when he's going to the early week-long stage races before the Tour de France starts proper. Either way, I don't know if they're going to take him to the Tour de France, but if his form starts getting better and better, Ineos have no other possibilities but to take him to the Tour de France. And then we're going to see a good Egan Bernal. We're going to see Carlos Rodriguez. Tom Pidcock's going to be there. And Geraint Thomas, who knows where his form's going to be after he does the Giro d'Italia and then starts the 2024 Tour de France. But if you can get all 4 riders there for Team Ineos on form, like I talked about earlier on Beyond the Coverage, would make for a spectacular Team Ineos team here to go against the 4 big-time best favorite riders in the Tour de France that will start this year. And of course, we know Jonas, Tadej Pogačar, Primož Roglič, and of course the Belgian rider Remco Evenepoel are the favorites. But if Ineos can get Egan Bernal back to his top form, and there's some drama between the 4 riders deciding who's going to do most of the work at the Tour de France, Egan Bernal's 2019 Tour de France form could get him up there in the race leader's yellow jersey. Win the overall classification against those two Slovenians, against Jonas Vingegaard, and against, of course, the Belgium kid Remco Evenepoel. That's a tall ask. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is he can get in there and he can highlight the Tour de France, win some stages, possibly put himself in the race leader's yellow jersey, just as we saw last year there on stage 5 when they went up over Col de Mary Blanc. And of course, we saw Jai Hindley wearing the race leader's yellow jersey after that stage. That's a perfect example of how Egan Bernal could be in the race leader's yellow jersey after the 2024 Tour de France starts proper. That's my take. Hope you guys like it. Hope you enjoyed my take there at Tour of Colombia on stage 5. Was a remarkable stage. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.